On today's episode, we're sitting down with the fabulous Shivani Hiralal, marketing and communications strategist here at PSI and mom to a brand new member of the 1-year-old club. Therapy, support groups, and speaking her truth have all played an integral role in navigating anxiety and depression. Today, we'll hear about Shivani's lived experience with pregnancy loss, pregnancy after loss, and the intersection of becoming a mother within South Asian culture. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the I Am One podcast are the speaker's own. Tuning into this podcast is not a replacement for therapy or any other form of professional help. Our discussions cover personal stories of perinatal mood and anxiety disorders and may feel triggering to some listeners. Your number one priority is to take care of yourself. So if you are in need of help, please reach out to the PSI helpline by calling or texting HELP to 1-800-944-4773 for help in English and in Spanish. At PSI, we want you to know you are not alone, you are not to blame, and with help, you will be well. Okay, let's get on with the podcast. Shivani, we are so excited for you to be here with us today. Welcome to the pod, my friend, my new friend. PSI is such a big family. We don't always have, the time or ability to connect with everybody that works at PSI. So I'm really excited that we get to hang out for a little bit and hear more about your story and the exciting things that you're involved in. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, share my story, and chat with you all.
We're excited too.
Yeah. So Shivani, can you tell us, just to start off, give us a little bit of an introduction to who you are?
Yeah, so my name is Shivani Hiralal. I am born and raised in not Southern California, but I was born and raised in California. So I'm a California girl at heart, but I moved to Arizona a year ago. So now I live in Arizona. And I am a mom to an almost 1-year-old as of next week, which is scary.
Oh, that's a huge milestone.
But mostly for you.
Correct. But I have all the feels right now. It's a very interesting time that I'm in right now. But, I'm excited. And I currently am part of the PSI staff as a marketing and communications strategist. So I'm just excited to continue helping spread the word, help with the stigma around perinatal mental health alongside sharing my story.
Yeah, awesome. Well, this is the perfect segue. Could you tell us a little bit more about how perinatal mood and anxiety disorders have touched your life personally?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed shortly after the birth of my son, probably around week 4 or 5, finally diagnosed with postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. Though I had already had my previous history with my mental health, I had already been diagnosed in the past with generalized anxiety disorder and clinical depression. And then following the loss of 2 of my pregnancies, I think it sort of amplified the anxiety during the pregnancy, which I tried my best to maintain as much as I can because I knew that my headspace would affect, the fetus essentially. And so I did everything and anything I could to protect my own space as much as I could so that I could give. I felt like that was the best start I could give to my child, which was just allowing them to not feel everything I was feeling, because sometimes I feel very strongly. And I didn't really want that to be something that he got because of me, or he, at that time I didn't know if it was going to be a boy or a girl, but yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
I think so. Okay, so you said that you had general anxiety and depression before. So earlier in your life, what did that look like? And were you at the time aware that that is a risk factor?
Yeah, so I knew it was a risk factor because I had spoken to my doctors about it as I was, going through my fertility journey and, having my struggles. And I was very honest with all of my healthcare providers, telling them that this is my history, because I didn't want it to fall through the cracks. And I wanted to be able to start advocating for myself early. Because unfortunately, that's what we have to do here.
Yes.
We have to advocate for ourselves.
What did the anxiety and depression look like earlier? Pre-pregnancy, pre-trying to conceive you? Was it earlier than that?
Yeah, it was earlier than that. I would have to say the onset started probably in 2018, which was a year after I had gotten married. So after a major life event,
Sure.
obviously, right? Lots of changes happening in my lives. At that specific point in time, I was also switching careers. I was going from running my own business to now trying to find a job to work somewhere because I needed a little bit more work-life balance. And those symptoms started to show up in really debilitating ways where I would just be overly consumed with my anxiety, and I had panic attacks way too many times. And it was hard because the panic attacks would literally feel like I was having a heart attack.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to survive this. And, like, here it goes. This is the end of me. And that's when I was first diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. And then we found out that I also was going through clinical depression at the time as well. And that was showing up in just the fact that I was just having a really hard time getting out of bed in the morning. I didn't have any motivation to find a job. I felt like a complete failure. There's a lot of support around me. My husband is trying to support me, but also the support felt like pressure. So it was just too much.
It was almost paralyzing, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay, I also want to dig into this fertility thing because I feel like we do not talk about this enough. So can you give us like how do you summarize a fertility journey? You really can't. Like there's so many points and there's so much difficulty. But if you had to turn that into a consolidated story, what would it look like? What was the progression?
Yeah. So it was deciding that my husband and I wanted to start trying for a family. And then, me being naive, thinking that it was going to be easy, right?
Oh, we decided now's the time. So it will just happen now, right?
Not the case.
No.
And it took almost close to a year to first fall pregnant, experience a miscarriage, felt completely robbed of the entire experience. Recovered from that, sort of, I guess, but falling pregnant again after that, just a few months later. So I was like, oh, okay, well, now my body knows what it needs to do. At that point, something was still wrong, and I knew it because my levels were all weird. I was spotting something was not right. And then I kept going to the doctors. They were like, you're having another miscarriage. And I was like, yeah, but this is not the same. It's not presenting the same as it did before. So I really don't think that it is. Can we run some additional testing? Can we figure this out? It took 3 months for them to figure out that and one ER visit to figure out that I had an ectopic pregnancy, which could have taken my life.
Yeah.
And so obviously you're trying to process all of this and you're presented with some options. And I was like, can we just go the non-invasive option if my tube is not going to burst? I feel a little bit nervous to get any sorts of procedures done.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I was able to get treated with 3 rounds of methotrexate to kind of manage that. And I had some really intense side effects from the 3 rounds of methotrexate, which I know were really small doses in hindsight, but those were rough. Especially,
were they emotional symptoms or physical?
No, it was like physical symptoms. Like I never used to get car sick. Now I sit in the car and I feel like I want to throw up. As soon as the car starts moving, like I would much rather drive the car than sit as a passenger or sit in the back seat because I wasn't feeling as nauseous if I was driving. And then it took a year after that.
So now we're like, what is that? 2.25 years in, and you are pregnant for the 3rd time, and you're, holding your breath and trying to be fine. Everything's fine. Yeah. But I can tell you that my husband and I didn't even know when we should start celebrating, be excited about it. Yeah. We just didn't know. I know that I was just like, okay, if I make it to this week, if I make it to 6 weeks, I'll be good. Now I'm at 6 weeks. If I make it to 10 weeks, I'll be good. And it's just that constant, I never felt like it was going to be okay. But I was trying to psych myself out.
You just kept moving the goalposts.
Yeah. That was I guess that was, in a way, it was the way I coped.
Yeah. Was it like that the whole pregnancy? You just kept moving the goalposts for yourself?
Yep.
Ugh, yeah. Wow.
And then in between all of this, in my 2nd trimester, I had to move states.
Right.
And find another provider and then, switch my maternity care over to another doctor that hadn't been with me through this entire journey. But thankfully, I was able to find someone who was great. And I'm so grateful that she was the doctor that took over my care, because she was at least understanding and aware of like why I was anxious in certain time periods, or like, how to kind of help manage that and help me feel better. She was willing to do some extra tests or allow me to like, ask whatever questions I want, and gave me the time that I needed, because it was a really challenging time. And again, like I said, we didn't really know when to be excited. And I think my husband and I both said to each other that like we wouldn't believe it until we heard him cry and until we actually saw him.
Yeah. So in the middle of these big life changes, that's really great that you had at least a smooth transition. I mean, as smooth as you could have wished for, right? With your care team.
Right.
You had a great doctor that was there for you in the ways that you needed her. And that's great. I'm so glad.
And at the time, were you on PSI's board?
I was. So
you were already plugged in.
Wait a second. Hold on. How long had you known about PSI? You're holding out on us, Shivani.
I know. So my introduction to PSI was back in 2020 when my husband and I lost one of our friends, actually one of his childhood friends, to postpartum depression.
Oh.
And her name is very well known, Nima Bhakta.
Yeah.
And her family has committed to, a whole movement around just overall like postpartum depression, how it can really get severe. And at that point in time, when I heard about her story and when I heard about her struggles, because of my own struggles with my own mental health at that time, yes, I at that point didn't have a child, or I wasn't pregnant yet. But it was really important to me, and I had committed at that time to really continue to help her family lift their voice and scream like from the mountaintops about the importance about perinatal mental health in general, specifically for the South Asian community, because it is such a topic that is not discussed, number one, and it's like scary. No one wants to talk about it. No one wants to be asked questions about it. And so I had made that commitment then, and I had found an opportunity to get involved. I had reached out to Wendy Davis. She was amazing. And I was like, how can I get more involved? And an opportunity kind of presented itself for me to join the board, and I explored it, and I was able to serve on the board for almost like 2.5 years before I joined staff. So
welcome to the other side.
That's incredible. Yeah.
I know.
We're so glad that you're here. So can I ask about South Asian culture a little bit more?
Yeah.
I'm curious about it. And the dynamic of like, talking about your mental health. Is it kind of frowned upon to speak about how you're feeling within your family or outside of your family, or both? Or tell us a little bit more if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I think that my immediate family dynamic is a little bit more unique because my parents and my siblings are a little bit more open to hearing about it. I think they don't really have a choice because I spoke about it anyway.
You're like, I've got this megaphone and I'm not turning it off. It only has an on button.
Yeah. Sorry, not sorry.
And yeah, so I think like whether they understood it fully or not, they had no choice but to listen.
Yeah.
But how did that feel for you? If there are some cultural trends or expectations around like not having that conversation, how did initiating that conversation feel for you?
So I think it felt a little bit more natural with my own family, but definitely with my extended family, it was uncomfortable. It wasn't something that our community responds to very well in general. So when you start talking about feelings, the most and first immediate response that you get is, it's okay, you just need to change yourself and everything will be okay. And I'm like, not happening.
Just change everything about you?
Yeah.
Just change all the things.
It's really difficult, I think, to put yourself in a very vulnerable position. But I think I knew like I had to speak up in order for people to recognize and understand that beyond the surface of what maybe you think about my life, or maybe even what you see on the outside when you see me at a social event, isn't necessarily what's happening on the inside. And so what's happening on the inside also matters and is part of my story. And I'm not going to be quiet because someone doesn't want me to talk about it. And if someone's uncomfortable with it, that's on them, not on me.
Okay, I feel empowered just hearing that.
I kind of feel pumped up, Shivani.
Yeah. Hey, I can be your cheerleader. It's all good.
Right? Okay. Let's have some hard conversations. Yeah.
We are not going to take on other people's emotions. We are not going to take on other people's emotions. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Good talk.
Yeah. We're like, end of podcast. Drop the mic.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Well, I guess our job here is done. It's been a great episode. No. So you opened up with your family and you spoke about your own experience. I mean, that's the best thing you can do, right? The best place to start.
Yep.
Is talking about your experience and how was that received?
I'll just say it was challenging. I don't think a lot of people knew how to accept this news. And then what does that mean to move forward? And I think what was really important is I took onus of my own mental health and said, hey, you know what? This is what I'm going through. You need to be aware of it because if things get really bad, I don't want it to be a shock to anyone around me or to my close family or people that need to be aware. So I'm not asking you to solve my issues. Like I am involving, my care team.
Yeah. I'm letting you know.
My support network. Yep. I'm taking this into my own hands. So I'm not asking you to solve my problems for me, but I need you to be aware that this is something that is really challenging.
Yeah. I'm not asking for advice. I'm just telling you. I want you to listen. I'm sharing this with you.
Was this all happening during pregnancy or postpartum or both?
So weirdly enough, when I started talking about my mental health, I think my family kind of already knew because my mental health journey started before I had fallen pregnant. And I had already started speaking up then. And my husband, over the course of the years, has learned a lot about mental health, thanks to me and my previous work at, working at NAMI, working at other organizations that support mental health. So he's learned a lot. And so weirdly enough, as much as I had a lot of anxiety, and like we talked about earlier, I was just kind of shifting my goalposts for my pregnancy. Yeah. My pregnancy itself did not lend a lot of, complications when it came to perinatal mental health. It really kind of hit in the postpartum period. And I think that was maybe because, it was everything. I was managing this whole thing. Now 9 months are up. Now my entire life just kind of changed. And it was just a interesting experience, I think, going to like that postpartum period and then having hormones drop as fast as they did. Yeah. And then not really knowing, like I had a lot of tools that I learned throughout my experiences working with my therapist, but it was rough.
What helped you through the postpartum period?
So definitely PSI Support Groups. Shout out there.
Snap. Nice.
So PSI Support Groups for sure. And those were also, I'm going to track back, but I'm going to also say that those were also very helpful for me during my loss. Both my losses.
That's so great.
Because although so many women experience it or so many individuals experience it, no one talks about it. And so when I was going through it, I felt so alone and felt like a complete failure. But going back to the postpartum period, I just needed to connect with other moms or other parents that are in the same stage as I am. But I was also going to therapy weekly. My therapist was checking in on me weekly because of my history. She really wanted to make sure that we were checking in consistently. And if there were any moments in which I felt a lot of overwhelm, she told me to email her and she would give me an appointment even on the weekend. She would make herself available to me. And I really appreciated that.
That's incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, she really held you.
And sometimes I just needed her to just log in and I just needed to like cry and be like, I hate this and I hate where I'm at. And am I ever going to be okay? And she just listened. That's all I needed.
Yeah. How long did you attend support groups
postpartum?
I love Emily's response to this. She's like, that's a good one.
Yeah. That's a hot question.
Hot take.
So I attended from 1 month postpartum all the way through 5 months postpartum. I was like, because around the 5 month mark is when my husband and I were in the middle of purchasing a home and we were about to start moving. And I was like, yep, something's got to
give.
Yeah. So yeah, for a couple months, it was more on like an as needed as I could kind of check my personal barometer, if you will. And I was like, oh yeah, this week I'm feeling real off. I do need to like, I think, connect and have that connection with others. And some weeks were just weeks where I just didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to hear other stories either. It just was too much.
And that's good to know. You know?
Yeah.
You had the support of your therapist that you were seeing. Was it still weekly at that point, or?
So it switched to kind of like an as needed, but we had a monthly kind of like check-in. So that way I knew I had a time, and I looked forward to those because it was my time. It was for me. I didn't have to hold anything back. And so it was a great space to be held, especially when you have so much going on, and like in 1 second you can be like completely happy, and the next second you could be like, I absolutely hate this. Help me. Can I get like airlifted out of here? Like,
send in backup.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you had her on your team, on your support team. So when did you make the switch over to working on the staff side at PSI? Like, were you still on the board then, postpartum, kind of like in that 5-month range while you're moving?
Yeah, I was, and I went back to work. I was working at that time for a software company, and I was given 3 months, which is nothing. I was not ready to go back. And unfortunately, when I went back, it was like I walked into like some administrative changes, and the fact that like essentially none of my projects while I was gone were being taken care of. So I walked in back to like, oh, we're going to need you to like restart everything, again.
Well, coincidentally, I have not the same capacity. Awesome. Cool.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. And I was like, oh, also don't have the brain capacity to even be back at work. But sure, let's try. So yes, I was still serving on the board of directors, and that it wasn't until I decided to I had multiple conversations with Wendy, and I was like,
she's so good.
Yeah. I was like, Wendy, I am going to have to, for personal reasons, step off of the board. I need to figure my life out. And I was also at that time, I knew that the job that I was at wasn't the right place for me. And I needed to make that next step. But because we had just made a big move, and I had just been through a lot over this, last 6 months, I just was like, you know what? I just need to take a beat. I'll need to figure this out. And it took a couple of weeks, but then this position with PSI kind of came to fruition, and then in a conversation, Wendy was like, so would this be something that you're interested in? And I was like, sign me up. Where do I sign? I'm here, Wendy.
You an offer you can't refuse.
Yeah, but also like it feels right. This is what I think, not even just kind of at what point I am in my life. That's beyond the point. The point is that this is where my passion lies, and being around a supportive group of individuals like yourselves, and like having other people that I can go to say, hey, you know what, today I'm really feeling like super underwater and I'm just not feeling it. And to be able to be, I don't know, given that space and not feel scared, like, hey, what are my coworkers going to be thinking about me?
Right.
And not be judged.
We're over here like trying to force virtual hugs on you. Like, come here.
Have you had enough water?
Come on.
Do you want to go take a nap? Like, these are the way those meetings go in this
Point
office.
the camera at the baby. We got this. Go close your eyes on the couch for 5 minutes. We got this. Go team.
It's like a complete difference in environment of where I was at before.
Yes.
And it just is exactly what I need to, like, 1, feed my soul. 2, continue,
that's true.
Continue my like healing journey. And 3, recognize that even though, I'm on this journey of healing, like I'll have my good days and I'll have my bad days, but I know that my work and my quality of work that I provide is always going to be valued. It's not going to be like, well, that was not good enough, Shivani.
Not her best work.
Right? Always her best work, because she brings herself, and that's why I feel like that's the magic of PSI is people aren't just like, you have a skill set that I'm looking for. It's like, you're a package deal. You're a human with like a personality and quirks, and some skills that I really like.
Mm-hmm.
All of you come over here and join the team. Like, who wouldn't want that? Like, bring your whole human self to your work. Yes, please.
Yeah. And I think that that's the reason why it resonates with me so much, because that's how I show up in my day-to-day life. Whether or not the people in my life feel comfortable with me being this open and honest about my
You get what you get,
condition,
friends.
Like, that's just who I am. I'm sorry. Like, if I'm too much, then don't come and visit.
As Elise Myers would say, go find less. If I'm too much, go find less.
I like that.
Elise, call us.
I know. Call us.
She's funny.
Come be on our pod. She's expecting baby number 2.
Yes, I did hear that.
Maybe she should be on the pod. I don't know. Anyway.
We'll reach out. Anyway, back to Shivani. We digress.
I was like, I guess this is the casting call for the podcast. This is a commercial.
Well, I guess they're all done talking to me now.
Jeez. Before we transition to the other stuff, the fun round, what else do we need to know? Have we not covered anything?
I will say this about the postpartum period, which was, I was really disappointed. I don't know what I expected. Maybe I just had no expectations, but
Was it not as advertised?
But I was just disappointed at the fact that, like, so much care is given to you during pregnancy, and you're being constantly looked after. You have your weekly appointments as you get closer to your delivery or due date. You can call for anything, and as soon as you deliver, you call that office and they're like, you're like a week postpartum, you shouldn't be feeling this way. And I'm like, okay, but I am feeling this way, and you are not the person that can tell me that I shouldn't be feeling or experiencing this. So can I just speak to my provider? Like, then it was like I was already diagnosed with my therapist before my 6-week checkup, and I had taken the same test in the office. And I love my provider, so don't get me wrong, but like, it wasn't reviewed before she came into the room. And so, the physical checkup was done. Everything looks great. Okay, I'm going to rush out the door. And I was like, hold up.
Wait a second.
You will not be leaving the room yet, because I'm not ready to let you go.
Have Actually, you scored my Edinburgh? Like,
yeah. And I was like, I don't know if you saw, but I already know. And I would like to speak to you about a plan. Like I wanted to also involve my OB and my providers in this entire process. And I said, like, with my therapist, we set up a plan of continuing to do, the talk therapy and using the tools that I've learned in the years, my 5-6 years of therapy. But there may be a chance that I might need to get myself on medication. I'd like to know what my options are. And I'd like you to be aware that I'm not just trying to get on medication for the sake of getting on medication, but I also have my own hesitations about it, right? Like, I knew that it was a commitment once you start, and I knew where I was at mentally. I wasn't able to give that commitment. Like, I could guarantee you I'd probably miss like multiple doses, and then I'd be asked in a couple weeks, how are you feeling? And I'll be like, still really terrible. And so I needed to get to a place where I was like, okay, yes, I'm going to commit to this. I'm going to do this. And I think I just felt really sad that this is how the postpartum phase goes. And then after that 6 weeks, it's like, okay, you're good. You can do whatever you want. And, everything's great. And I'm like, no, it's not.
It's not great. You get a lot of TLC when you're pregnant. And then afterwards, not so much.
Yeah.
It's a missed opportunity.
But you got some TLC at PSI. Lots of acronyms.
I did.
Lots of acronyms. And I'm so glad that you had PSI and
that we have you too.
Yeah, we are very lucky.
Yeah, so I guess I was sad. I was disappointed that this is what you get.
You get 3 months off, return to a you-know-what storm, and not great follow-up care. So call to action. We'll put a link in the show notes. Let's come up with some great ideas.
I think I can't scream this from the mountaintops loud enough, but it's like, please, please, please advocate for yourself. Yes. Like, if you know yourself better than anybody else, and if you don't feel like you're getting the care, like, you just get in their face. I know that my doctor's office did not like when I called. When they were like, what's your name and date of birth? They're like, she's calling again. It's Shivani. But I was like, I don't care.
Sorry.
You're like, I'm back. And another thing.
Goodness.
Rightly so.
Because
Rightly so.
I just think that it's so important. It doesn't matter what anybody says to you on the other side. And I know it does suck. And trust me, I cried so many times getting off the phone with these nurses or these, people that answer the phones. But I'm so glad that I stood my ground and said, no, I need this, because that's the only reason why I can tell you that I am here, still in my healing journey, but I'm feeling so much better. And I feel like I don't think I would have got to this point as fast if I didn't prioritize the fact that, like, no, my recovery is just as important as my pregnancy.
Yeah. This is making me think of something that my brother and sister-in-law do often before, like, anything. They are always taking notes on their phone. They are taking notes on their phone before they have a meeting with someone, before they go to the pediatrician. And I feel like this is like the perfect application for when you're in the appointment with the OB or after at the pediatrician, but like, you know that you have something that you need to ask about. You go to like the note-taking app on your phone and you write that S word down.
Thank you.
Write it down and then have it open and say, oh, I made a note for myself and I need to ask you about blank.
Oh my gosh. I can't tell you how many times I forget. It's almost like
you walk through the door and it's like
I black out, like my mind goes blank and it's like, how are you doing today? Great. Like I forget about the thing. Why? But what brings you here today? I don't know. You need to take my weight and my height. I don't know. Like my blood pressure.
Because you could write it in a journal and then leave it by your bedside table and be like, well, okay. But you are not going to forget your phone.
Yeah. So it's so funny that you mentioned that. And I love that, because I started to do that too, even with our doctor's appointments with our son. Like my husband and I have a shared note. And so both of us can add our questions in there. And that way we know that our questions are being answered. Both parties are being heard. Right.
Right.
And a part of the process at the end of the day, it's a partnership and with whoever is your support, and getting them involved also allows for you to feel like that connection and that communication is being like established and maintained.
Yeah.
Because it's a hard, especially in that first year, it is hard.
You're
like,
sleep deprived.
There's so many milestones that your child has to navigate, and you're just kind of like getting all this unsolicited advice from like around you is like, family that's like, you should do it this way. And I'm like, oh, thank you. If I wanted to take your advice, I will ask you.
Thank you.
Like
I'll take that under advisement.
The comment card box is currently closed. Thank you. Try again later.
Yeah, correct. And it's so funny that you say that, because one of my nephews, he's 10 years old now.
Oh, so he's an expert. My 10-year-old
really
is
funny.
An expert.
Oh, he's an expert. He says if you have like a comment to him, he'll be like, leave it in the comments. And I'm like,
yes,
correct. So now when I get unsolicited advice, I'm like, please leave it in the comments. We'll decide if we want to take it. It's great.
As a quick aside, a cousin of mine just had a baby shower this weekend, and we had these little cards sitting out on the table, and it was like, write your best advice down on this card. And my advice was to not listen to anybody. Specifically, I think I didn't word it like that. I think it was like worded a little bit nicer than that. Just that there will be lots of people that have all kinds of ideas about what you should do and when you should do it. But the most important thing is for you to do what feels right for you, and that's my advice.
Yeah.
It's okay. Some people have great things to suggest, but when it's unsolicited, come on now.
But I'd also like to add too, like I was in a really unique time in my postpartum period where I had really close friends that also had babies within like the 2 months before, 1 month before.
That's a great exception to that.
Yeah. It also is a double-edged sword.
Oh, totally. Because you're like, why is your kid doing XYZ without so much coercion? Where mine.
Yeah.
Definitely should be saying 16 words right now.
Yeah. And I think it's that constant, like my friends were great and I don't think ever put this pressure, but I did that to myself. I was like, oh my God, this baby's already doing this. And like my son is 2 months younger. So like, obviously he's still going to get there, but I'm like, oh, am I not doing enough? And then it turns into just complete feelings of failure.
No, he's 1/3 or 1/4 or 1/5 younger than this peer. Like, of course he's not doing the same stuff. But yeah, we as humans compare.
We like to compare. We do.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Stop that.
so I'll normalize that comparisons do happen. But I will also say that one of the things that I kept coming back to is, yes, I would compare and then I'd fall into despair.
Oh,
look at that. I rhymed.
That should be a t-shirt.
Wait.
Yeah, write it down.
Compare and despair.
Copyright that. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
This is a great place for awesome ideas. We've had some humdingers on the pod.
But after that, I would always come back to the fact that like my child is my child and every child is different.
Yep.
And so it's okay. The pressure that you put on yourself, then it goes to your child. And then it's just like, it's like a cycle. And this is like where I think the South Asian community, that generational trauma of these cycles are continuing to like be passed down from generation to generation. Nobody wants to stop because it's hard to say like, hey, you know what? No, I'm not going to go down this path. But like I put the brakes on and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to put this pressure on myself. I'm not going to put this pressure on my son. Like he's doing fine. He's doing just fine. He's growing. He's interacting. He's developing. And that's all I can do. And it's okay. Like everybody else is also going through a challenge as well, even if they may not be talking to you about it. So just like, I don't know. It's just like, don't fall into that pattern because it can be detrimental to your mental health too.
I want to ask a question because I don't want to make an assumption and I don't want any listeners to make an assumption. When you're talking about that transgenerational trauma, are you talking about the comparing, the competitiveness? What part of that were you trying to identify?
Yeah, so I would say definitely the comparing, the competitiveness, but also the other component of like, what are people going to say about you if you don't do it this way? Right?
How that reflects on you, how it reflects on your family.
Yep.
Okay. Got it.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it is. Speaking of pressure.
Under pressure.
How about a rapid fire lightning round?
Dun, 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 dun.
I don't like these.
Oh.
This is not good for someone that has anxiety, okay?
So here's the deal. It's actually very slow.
Yeah, it is.
That's the thing about our lightning round. It's not so lightning-y.
Okay, sounds good. I'm ready.
Okay, first question. What's your favorite podcast besides this one? Duh. If you listen to podcasts.
Okay, so I'll be honest with you. I haven't listened to a podcast in a hot minute besides this one. So
I guess our job here is done. Next question. Ours is the best. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, don't have anything to respond to that as of right now.
I'll put our own website in the show notes then. I'm just kidding. Can you put your own website in your own podcast?
We're gonna find out.
We'll find out. We do what we want.
Does anyone else in your life recommend a podcast? Like, is your spouse, are any members of your family always trying to get you to listen to something?
Oh yeah, my husband.
Oh, okay.
Go on.
My husband is all about these work on yourself. Podcasts that are like, oh, this one. Yeah, he definitely has a growth mindset. Sometimes I'm like,
settle down.
Let's be a little more closed-minded, please. Come on.
It's enough personal growth.
Great. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. Exactly.
But like sometimes I'm like, no, don't feel like listening to that. No, but
I don't feel like being more awesome. Okay. Jeez.
I know. I already am. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
No, one of the podcasts, and I don't remember the name, but I can definitely send it to you with Dr. Brené Brown. Her podcasts are definitely some. I've listened to a couple different episodes, and when I'm on my soul searching path.
Okay. Yeah. Do you prefer a book in your hand or a book in your ear, or both? As it turns out.
Okay, so I have an unpopular opinion. I like both.
Yes.
Oh. Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, is it the same book or is it different books? One book you prefer in the audio format and you have a second book going simultaneously. How many books are you reading? Oh. You're a multi-booker.
I'm a multi-booker because sometimes that's just what I need. And like, sometimes I like want a book. I want a book that I can get lost in the story. And like, it's a book that I don't have to think.
Yeah.
A lot of what I like to read is just like, I don't know, fun, lighthearted.
Yes.
I don't know, romance, I guess. And then I love to do a lot of digging into the self-work, self-care, those kinds of things. So those are all the books that I like to sometimes listen to. Yes. Because sometimes like I'll pick out nuggets and I can do other things, and I like get a little bit more motivated when listening to someone else like pump me up through my ear. It's great.
Awesome. Yeah. Are you listening to or reading anything in particular that you would love to recommend?
Yes.
Okay, I'm ready.
Highly recommend. So I'm listening to, and I actually just purchased the actual physical book because it is that good that I need to have both.
Okay.
Relatable.
It is Real Self-Care by Dr. Pooja Lakshman, and it is going beyond the crystals, the bath salts,
yes,
you know, all of those things, and it digs into what does it mean to really take care of yourself. And I love that book, and it is so good, and it has some really great actionable things that you can start right away. So it's a great book.
Nice.
Well, there goes my paycheck.
Yep.
We get really good book recommendations, and I was just saying, like, it's getting a little expensive to do this round.
Yeah.
Because things keep showing up on my doorstep.
And like the pile of books is getting bigger and bigger.
I know,
but like we're not reading them.
I now have 4 books on my nightstand and a lineup in my Audible library. Looks like I'm getting another one.
Yep, it's good. We'll have to reconvene once you guys read it, and I would love to hear your
book club. I am one book club.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Good.
Wendy, I've got a podcast expansion idea for you.
She's like, you guys are not allowed to have ideas anymore. Okay? That's it. We've let you have ideas. That's enough right now. Calm down.
She's like, just stay the course.
Stay in your lane.
Dude, right? Sorry.
Does not compute.
That was my best advice to myself that was on the last episode, was like, stay in your lane. Like, you're not going to go buy a bus and drive all around the country and provide treatment to people. Like, that is not your lane. You do not belong there.
We joke about it. We don't have capacity for that, but we're going to keep bringing it up.
Yeah.
Shivani, what is your go-to for a quick mental break?
A nap.
Oh, yes.
Are you one of those people who can take a short nap and you're not groggy and delirious afterwards?
I don't know, because I feel like I just need a nap so bad for like my own sanity that I will take a nap. Sometimes I'm too like mentally and emotionally charged to like fall asleep. And then once I fall asleep, I also don't put on an alarm because I'm like, you know what, that's just rude. So I wake up when I wake up. It's usually not longer than an hour, like for whatever reason. I think I just get like anxious while I'm sleeping to be like, I think I've been sleeping for too long.
Oh,
wow.
She's an anxious sleeper.
And I wake up. Yes. And I wake up and I'm like, okay, that was great. That's what I needed. But then also I'm like, I could have just stayed sleeping, because I think that's when my body finally like shuts down. Yeah. And so like my whole body turns into just like, you know.
That sound was her,
makes sense
for our listeners. That sound was her kind of slinking into her chair. Means slinking.
Naps, and then also a walk outside.
Ooh.
Well, I live in Arizona, so like 4 months out of the year, it is like burning hot, so you can't do that.
Walk if it's safe. Yeah. Yeah.
But if the weather permits, then yes, getting just like a walk around the block or going outside, because we actually live like near some really beautiful mountains. And like for whatever reason, my husband makes a lot of fun at me, because when we came to Arizona, I mean, we have mountains in California, but we didn't live close to them. And so I had told him like, oh my God, everywhere you look, there are mountains, and it's so grounding. And he was like, ha ha ha, you and your grounding mountains. But I'm like, hey man, it's what my soul needs.
Yeah.
Don't hate.
So I hear we're all getting mountain tattoos. That's what I heard.
Cheaper than a bus.
Tell me when you're going.
Way cheaper.
Wendy, think about it.
Next staff meeting, everybody will have a mountain tattoo.
So what is your favorite parenting hack? Do you have one?
Yeah. don't have any expectations.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
literally, just don't have any expectations.
Give yourself the gift of not expecting things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ain't that the truth?
Because when you have expectations, you allow for yourself to potentially get disappointed, and you don't need to do that. So keep yourself happy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because then you'll be pleasantly surprised if, things are good. Then you're like, wow, look at that.
Yeah.
No expectations, no bar, no way to be disappointed.
That's a great parenting hack. That's a great life hack. That's a great pregnancy hack. That's a great, I'm about to have a baby. I wonder how this delivery is going to go hack.
Yeah.
Go with the flow, said the anxious person. I'm so funny. I have generalized anxiety too.
Totally go with the flow. Okay.
If you can do that. It's true. What is one way that you will show yourself some radical love today, Shivani? Don't get scared by radical.
I know, I'm scared.
Just love. How will you show yourself some love today? Take a nap?
You know what? Maybe I will potentially take a nap, but I think
Awesome.
I think another way I will do that is just by telling myself how proud I am of myself, because I tend to have that, that loudspeaker in my head, which is not the nice self-talk.
Not the goals.
Yeah. Typically tries to like outshine, And so I think I'm going to just celebrate. I'm going to be proud of myself, and I'm going to pump myself up because I deserve to be appreciated, even if I may not feel it elsewhere.
We appreciate you and we celebrate you today.
Yes.
Thank you.
Because you're awesome. And we're so thankful that you came on the podcast and shared your story and chatted with us.
We need to know about her
permitted
water.
us to ask you. Oh my gosh.
Shivani, how do you take your water? Ice, no ice, flavor, no flavor, bubbles?
Real big question.
It depends. So in the summer months, it would be iced water. And in the winter months, because it's so cold, just like room temp, please don't give me any ice.
Agree.
I'm going to freeze over. And then I would say this is not a water, but I love tea. I love myself some tea.
Oh, what kind
Hot,
of tea?
cold, all the things?
Hot and cold. So I have a very soft spot for like milk tea with boba. It is my like favorite, and it's like what I treat myself with. Yes. That's how I'm going to show myself some radical love.
Go get yourself some boba. Go get that.
Yes. See?
We want to see a picture of you with that boba later.
Yes, I will definitely send that. But I also drink chai, like Indian spiced chai.
Like for real chai.
Yes. And not chai tea. Can I just recommend, like when someone says chai tea, you're basically saying tea. No. It's just chai.
Because chai means tea.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm new here.
So you're like for real. You're throwing like cardamom pods like into...
Yeah, we have like a specific already made, like every family typically has their own chai masala recipe. And like I use the chai masala, but then I also add like ginger and like other things to it to just, amp it up a little bit. But every morning, have myself a cup of chai. It's great. Yes.
Oh my gosh. That sounds delish.
If you guys come visit me, I shall make you some chai.
I was thinking about how I could swing by, like maybe on the way home from the grocery store. I'm north of Seattle.
My husband is going to Arizona in August, and I'm like, do I just like hitch a ride? Like,
yeah, you should.
Swing by and pick me up first,
on the way.
Pick me up, please. Pick me up on the way. Yes.
Shivani, thank you so much for sharing your story and the intersections that your story lands in, all of those spaces where who you are plays into your personal experience with PMADS and PSI and parenting today. So thank you for coming on the pod.
We're so glad that you came here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the I Am One podcast. Check out today's show notes where we'll drop links to all the important things that we mentioned in this episode. Please consider sharing about our show on social media and following and rating our show wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. It only takes a minute of your time and, well, that'll help with our collective mission of bringing resources and local support to folks worldwide. From everyone here at PSI, thanks again for listening.